Hello and welcome to Understanding Adult Protection. My name is Martina Johnson and I am the Adult and Home and Community-Based Services Supervisor at Cook County Public Health and Human Services. Thanks for joining me today. In April 1980, Governor Al Quie signed Minnesota's Vulnerable Adult Act into law. The Act's definition and related laws are listed below. If you want more information about each statute, please click on the links. Department of Human Services rules govern the investigation and reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults and some aspects of the emergency and continuing protective social services required to be furnished by local social services agencies under the Vulnerable Adult Act. Cook County Public Health and Human Services has a role in creating safety for vulnerable adults by connecting them with resources and supportive services. PHHS is also responsible for investigating reports of adults who have been maltreated. It is the statutory responsibility of Cook County Public Health and Human Services to provide adult protective services and to respond to reports of suspected maltreatment of vulnerable adults made under the Vulnerable Adult Act. Adult protective services include intake, response to emergency adult protective service notifications, investigations, and safety planning to remediate and prevent maltreatment experienced by vulnerable adults. You are being asked to take part in this training because you are considered to be a mandated reporter. Minnesota Statute 626.5572 Subdivision 16 defines what a mandated reporter is. As an in-home support service provider, you are engaged in the care of vulnerable adults and therefore are required to report any suspected maltreatment. Some examples of other mandated reporters include social workers, law enforcement personnel, doctors, nurses, therapists, dentists, educators, and anyone employed in a licensed setting. In the state of Minnesota, a vulnerable adult is defined as either categorical or functional. A categorical vulnerable adult is any person 18 years of age or older who is a resident or inpatient of a facility or receives services from a provider listed within the statute, including foster care, assisted living services, home care, etc. So if you are an inpatient in a hospital or if you are a resident of a nursing facility, you are protected under the Vulnerable Adult Act and you are considered to be a vulnerable adult while you are in that facility. A functional vulnerable adult is any person 18 years of age or older, regardless of residence or whether any type of service is received, possesses a physical or mental infirmity or other physical, mental, or emotional dysfunction that impairs the individual's ability to provide adequately for their own care without assistance, including the provision of food, shelter, clothing, health care, or supervision. And because of the individual's dysfunction or infirmity and the need for care services, the individual has an impaired ability to protect his or herself from maltreatment. This can feel a little bit tricky for people because you might think of an individual and think that person is really vulnerable. And just because someone is vulnerable just by the definition of vulnerability or being vulnerable, it doesn't necessarily mean that they meet the definition per the statute. And that's not really something that you need to be too concerned about. That's really the adult protection worker's job to determine whether or not someone is a vulnerable adult. But I think it's just good for you to have this background information. Minnesota Statute 626.5572 defines 3 types of maltreatment: abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. Abuse is defined as physical, sexual, or emotional. Physical abuse means inflicting physical pain or injury. Some examples include pushing, pinching, shoving, burning, biting, or kicking. The inappropriate use of medications and physical restraints can also be regarded as physical abuse. Sexual abuse may include touching, fondling, or any sexual activity when the vulnerable adult is unable to understand, unwilling to consent, threatened, or physically forced. Emotional abuse may include verbal assaults, threats of abuse, harassment, and/or intimidation. When looking at neglect, we're talking about caregiver neglect and self-neglect. The statute defines caregiver neglect as the failure of a caregiver to supply a vulnerable adult with care or services, including but not limited to food, clothing, shelter, healthcare, or supervision. So this might mean that someone has taken on a caregiver role for the vulnerable adult. For example, a individual with dementia has a spouse who has agreed to take on that person's care. And if the spouse is not ensuring that that individual is getting their medications as prescribed and it's adversely affecting their health, or maybe they're not providing the level of supervision that's appropriate to keep that person safe, they might be considered to be engaging in caregiver neglect. Self-neglect can occur when a vulnerable adult demonstrates an inability to adequately care for themselves in a manner that maintains their physical or mental health or safety. So we might be looking at a situation where someone is living in a home where they've hoarded food or animals or other items that makes it unsafe for them or the people that live around them. For example, maybe they have collected so many items that they can't safely get out of their home if there were a fire. Or maybe they smoke, and if they were to drop a cigarette in their home, it would immediately catch the home on fire. Or maybe they have many animals living in the home and the animals aren't using a litter box, and so there's animal feces around the home. That would be considered a situation that would need to be looked into for self-neglect. Financial exploitation may include theft or withholding of money or property and/or use of the vulnerable adult's money or property not for their benefit. So there's lots of different types of financial exploitation that we might look at. You might think of someone using the vulnerable adult's finances for their own purposes, fraud, forgery, forced property transfers, or the act of purchasing expensive items with the elders or vulnerable adults' money without their knowledge are also examples of financial abuse. What are the signs of maltreatment? With abuse, you might see bruises, pressure marks, broken bones, abrasions, or burns. Refusal to seek medical help for injuries. Nonchalant attitude towards any of the injuries when confronted about them. Odd changes in behavior. Maybe your service recipient is normally someone that's pretty happy and cheerful, friendly, and all of a sudden they are a lot more reserved and really aren't engaging in conversation with you much anymore, accompanied with some of the other signs. Strained or tense relationships, unresponsiveness and dislike for communicating with others. So again, that person that maybe was more open with you in the past and now has suddenly become very withdrawn and secretive. These might be some signs of abuse. Signs of caregiver neglect might include visible weight loss, bed sores. If you have a service recipient who is bedbound and their caregiver is responsible for turning them or shifting their weight every so often, and if that is not occurring for someone that is bedbound, pressure sores or bed sores can result, and they are very, very painful. Lack of supervision when medical professionals have indicated it is necessary is another possible sign of caregiver neglect. An example might be an individual who has dementia and the doctor has indicated that they need 24/7 supervision in order to be safe, and you are finding that their caregiver is leaving them home alone for periods of time. That could be a sign of caregiver neglect. Also, evidence that basic hygiene needs aren't being met. For example, the vulnerable adult is not regularly bathed or dressed in clean clothing. So maybe you're noticing an odor about that person when you are providing care, or you're seeing that they're dressed in the same clothing every time you come over, and that clothing is soiled or has food on it, and they're just not being cleaned up properly. That could be a sign of caregiver neglect. Signs of self-neglect might include refusal to seek medical attention when needed. An example of this would be, say you are working with John Doe, and John has diabetes, and you are noticing that he is not having you pick up his medications on a regular basis, and he is not maintaining his diabetic-friendly diet, and he has been talking about how his foot is really painful, and he happens to take off his sock and show you that he's got a sore on his big toe. Now, normally John is really on top of these things. He goes to the doctor regularly. He takes his medication as prescribed. But for some reason, in the last few weeks, he is different. And he doesn't seem to recognize that he needs to go in and have his foot looked at. And you say, John, I really think that you should go to the doctor. And he says, no, I think I'll be fine. It's okay. What might be happening there is that he's experiencing a cognitive change as a result of not properly managing his diabetes. And he might unintentionally be engaging in self-neglect. And that's a situation where you definitely would want to let Anita know that you have concerns, or if the person is a social worker, let them know, or a nurse, because sometimes those cognitive changes or imbalances that occur can affect someone's insight into whether or not they need to seek help. Another sign would be visible weight loss, sunken eyes, lack of basic hygiene, water, food, or clean clothing. Again, this is tied typically to cognitive changes. So someone who normally has really good hygiene, cares about their presentation, all of a sudden they are not caring for themselves, they have an odor about them. Maybe they're not recognizing that they're hungry, so they're not eating, and you're noticing, again, back to that visible weight loss, they don't have enough food in the house, or they're not asking you to go to the grocery store and get more food. Maybe they're not changing their clothing regularly. They're in the same clothes that they were in last week. Could be signs of self-neglect. Unsafe home setting, so that would go back to that hoarding situation, someone who's collecting items or animals, rodent infestation, all signs of self-neglect. Some of the signs of financial exploitation might include unusual ATM activity, large withdrawals from bank accounts, signatures on checks that don't match the signature of the vulnerable individual, or life circumstances that don't match up with the individual's financial assets. So the first three things you probably wouldn't know about for your clients or your service recipients unless the individual tells you, hey, I was looking at my ATM or my credit union statement and I'm seeing all these withdrawals. What do you think is going on? Or, oh my goodness, I got my statement yesterday and there was a withdrawal for $500 and I don't remember making that. Or maybe they bank at an institution where there's copies of their checks and they see that a check was written out to a certain place and they don't remember writing that check out, and when you look at the check, over their shoulder, if they allow you to do that, you're seeing that the signature doesn't match. But the thing here that you probably would be more likely to see as an in-home support provider would be someone who had money and seemed to be able to afford their bills and afford, maybe they get certain groceries, and then all of a sudden that changes and they're talking with you about, I don't seem to have as much money as I used to in my account and I don't know what's going on. Or I really would like to go out to lunch with Betty, but I don't have the money this month. And say that that's not really like them to suddenly not have the money. That in and of itself is not necessarily financial exploitation, but it might pique your interest to ask more questions like, well, what has changed for you? Why do you, what happened? Are you seeing any additional money going out of your account that wasn't there before? And maybe they say, well, I don't even manage my account. My son manages it for me and he's telling me that I don't have the money. That would be a red flag to me, that someone who always has had that ability to do those things and suddenly doesn't, and has someone else controlling their finances telling them that they don't have the money, that's concerning. So those are some of the signs to look out for. So when talking about the signs of maltreatment, I just want to point out here that the signs that I talked about previously are pretty straightforward, and if you see them, you're going to know, yes, I should make a report of concern. But sometimes the signs aren't always so overt. The thing with you as in-home support providers that's really unique is that you are regularly going into people's homes, and you're doing that over a period of time, and you're forming relationships, and you're getting to see them over a period of time that maybe other professionals aren't privy to. You're really in a unique position to be in this really intimate environment with your clients. And so what you might see are more of those behavioral changes that others don't see. So maybe you are seeing something different in how they're interacting with you, or how they're interacting with others, or how they're presenting themselves. And you're noticing it because you've worked with them over time and you can see those changes occurring. Or maybe you have developed a trusting relationship with them and the individual shares with you, I received an email from someone and he told me he really needed help and I gave him $10,000 and I'm scared. I don't know what to do. I can't believe I did that, but I thought that I could trust him. That might be something that individual wouldn't share with anybody else because they're ashamed of what happened. They might not even want to share that with their adult children. So you're really in this unique position of having these relationships with people where you might see some of these things or hear some of these things that other people don't. So because of that, it's really important that if you do notice something, that you err on the side of caution and talk with Anita or make a MARC report if you think that maltreatment is occurring. And just know that if you're making that report in good faith, that's all that needs to happen. The individual isn't going to know that you were the one that reported it. And it just allows those who work in adult protection to be able to go in and talk with the individual, learn more about the situation. It allows us to facilitate help if help is needed. It allows us an opportunity to go in and talk with the person where otherwise we might not have that opportunity. So I just really want to impress upon you how valued you are in this respect, because you do have such a unique relationship with the individuals that you work with. Attached here is a video out of Alberta, Canada that I like to show during presentations on adult protection because it gives some really great examples. There's 3 different scenarios, and as you're watching this, try to think of the different types of maltreatment that might be occurring here.
Well, you can't. She's just not up to seeing visitors today or tomorrow. Well, it's just not possible. She's not seeing anybody, and she doesn't want to see anybody. No, not even you. You'll just have to wait until she feels better.
Ed, come here. I want that. Ed!
Now she's up again and calling me. I have to hang up. I'll call you soon when she feels better. Listen, Mom, you're just not in a position to have visitors right now. Maybe once you sign the documents, you'll feel better.
But I'm feeling fine.
Mom, we both know you'll feel better once you sign the house over to me. I just don't want you feeling overwhelmed with the burden of the house on your mind. All right. You might as well just go to your room then. Because we have nothing else to talk about until you sign. And you're not seeing any visitors until this is sorted out.
Oh, I hate these things.
Here, let me do it. What's your PIN number?
1970, your birth year.
Hi, Gloria.
Oh, hi, dear. How are you doing?
It's not working. We'll try again tomorrow.
But Mom, you had money in your pocket.
Come on, I don't want to hear about money we don't have. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Mary, I'm hungry. Are you on your way out to the store again? guys.
Oh, Phil, you're back. How was school today?
Oh, there's no school today, Gramps. Just practice.
Okay, I am on my way out. Dad, you stay comfortable. I'll grab some food and bring it back later.
But Mary, I'm hungry now.
You'll be fine for a little bit, Dad. I'll hurry, okay? Can you get your grandpa a glass of water and take him back to his room? Here, Dad, make sure you take your pill today too, okay?
I thought I already did.
No, and you missed yesterday too, so just take a couple of extra. He'll be fine, he just needs a nap.
What'd you say?
Nothing, Dad. You make sure to have a lie down. Okay, I'll see you guys when I get back.
All right, come on, Gramps. Let's go. All right. Almost there, Gramps. Almost there. All right, and... Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go, Gramps. Let's go.
Wait, you're not gonna just leave him like that, are you?
He'll be fine.
I don't know, man. That just doesn't seem right.
He'll be fine. My mom gave him something that's gonna help him sleep for a while. Come on, we're gonna be late for practice.
You know what? I just remembered. I gotta go home first and get my cleats. So I'll just meet you there, okay?
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll see you there.
Okay.
If you or someone you know is experiencing elder abuse, please call the Family Violence Information Line. Elder abuse. Learn the signs, break the silence.
I think it's important to note that mandated reporters can only report what they know. So as a mandated reporter, if you have a concern, it just needs to be in good faith. You need to have an honest belief that abuse or neglect is occurring. And if you have that, Minnesota law specifically provides immunity from civil or criminal penalties for reports of suspected abuse or neglect made in good faith, whether mandated or voluntary. And what this means is that if it turns out that maltreatment is not occurring, there are no consequences for you making the report if you were doing it in good faith. The other thing that's important to know as a reporter is that your identity is considered to be confidential information and will not be shared with the alleged perpetrator or alleged victim. So you are also protected in that respect. So we've talked about the Vulnerable Adult Act. We've talked about mandated reporters, which you are. We've talked about what defines a vulnerable adult in the state of Minnesota. We've talked about different types of maltreatment and also signs of maltreatment. And now you're probably wondering, how do I report maltreatment? And this is the information this slide includes exactly where you would go to make a report of suspected maltreatment. And that would be the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center, or MARC. MARC was implemented throughout the state of Minnesota July 1st, 2015. And this is where all reports of suspected maltreatment should be made. It's staffed 24/7. And the phone number is listed here, 844-880-1574. You can also click on the link that I've included here. If you have any questions about whether or not to make a report, or just any questions in general, feel free to connect with Anita anytime you have questions or concerns in this area. And you can also call me. My phone number is 218-387-3617. Thank you so very much for your time in listening to this presentation and for your role as an in-home support provider in our community. You do very valuable work, and we are so grateful for you. So thank you.